Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. We are live with Shop Talk number 112. I can't believe we've had 112 of them already. And I'm going to do a little song for you here, but I'm going to set that up here in just a moment. First of all, I just wanted to tell you there was a new baby born on my son's farm and his channel, and he's got a video out, and I do have a link to that in the description of this video. So after we're done here, I hope you'll check that out. I'm gonna do a little song for you that I wrote, probably 20 years ago, maybe 23 or 4 years ago. Can't really remember, to be honest. But I was leaving a jam session in Doolittle, Missouri. Let me back up and say I've done this song before, so those of you who've been watching a long time, you will already know this song. But we've got a lot of new viewers, and it's kind of a silly song, one of the only silly songs I ever wrote, so I thought you might enjoy it again. Anyway, backing up to where I was leaving this jam session in Doolittle, Missouri, and I was literally halfway out the door, and I felt somebody grab me by the arm and jerk me back through the door backwards. And he says, I heard you could write a song about anything. And I said, I don't know where you heard that, but I have written a lot of songs. And he says, well, I'm stuck and I need help. He says, I've been trying to write this song for 3 years. And he says, I can't get past the first line. And he went on and, tried to describe how tough it was. And I said to him, boy, it must be a doozy of a first line. He goes, well, it is. I said, well, what is it? He says, have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? I said, well, that's quite a mouthful. So anyway, it was 11 miles back to my house, and I realize this camera's not focusing, by the way, but it was 11 miles back to my house, and by the time I got back to the farm here at the farm, I was completely finished with the song. All I did was run into the computer and write it down, and it goes something like this. Have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? Like the doctor's office or the DMV or somewhere that you work. Well, that's my whole life story, and if you listen to my sad tale, I'm gonna tell you why I had to spend 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. You see, I went to the doctor's office, 'cause that's where my baby worked. And I was fixing to surprise her, so I put on my best shirt. But when I got to the doctor's office, well, it was me that got surprised. 'Cause there she sat on the doctor's lap, wearing nothing but her big blue eyes. Well, she jumped up and she turned real red, and that was a color I could see. And it was just as well, 'cause now there was nothing between that old doc and me. So I went for my knife, then I thought twice, and I grabbed an old bedpan, and I swung it like Mighty Casey. I was aiming for the grandstand. Now the coroner's report told it all real well, and I was charged with fumicide. And that's a combination of the bedpan and old-fashioned homicide. Now the judge just laughed and threw the book at me, but then I guess he had a second thought. And that was the break in the case for me, 'cause 10 years was all I got. Have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? Well, that's my whole life story, and it kept me from finishing first. I guess I'm a victim of circumstance. You've heard my sad tale, and now you know why I spent 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. Yeah, I guess I'm lucky I only spent 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. Sad song. Yeah, that was quite a mouthful. When he first said that to me, I thought, I don't know if I can write a song around that or not. But literally, it was 11 miles home, and I was finished when I got home. So that's not bad for an 11-mile song. Oh, moving on here. Let's see. we've hit 90,150 subscribers, so we're still moving up. We're moving up at a rate of about 1,200 per month at the moment. It's been more than double that at times, but right now that's where we're at, about 1,200 a month. So it's going to take a little longer to get to the 100,000, but we're going to get there eventually, I hope, if I live long enough. Let's see, moving on to the next thing here. I have a little photo that someone sent to me that I thought you all would get a kick out of. So let's go to that. Yeah, it says, always remember the decimal point when ordering a 7.5 millimeter drill bit. I think he forgot the decimal point there. He got a 75 millimeter drill bit. So I thought my friends out there in millimeter land would get a kick out of that. I know I do. It's pretty funny. Okay, and then let's see. Another thing that has occurred, and I've gotten a couple emails about it, is that feedback eliminator that I showed a few shop talks back, I think it was. Someone asked about how to mic a large group, and what kind of a microphone would pick up the whole group. And I was telling them I use my large diaphragm AKG microphones. But the problem with those microphones is they feed back at the drop of a hat. I mean, literally, that's the thing they like to do best, is feed back. And all large diaphragm, condenser microphones, those large diaphragm condenser microphones all like to feed back. So I showed my feedback eliminator that you really need. So here's a little deeper dive into that feedback eliminator. Let's go there. It is a FBX Solo. It says it's made by Sabine or Sabine. Everybody would pronounce that different. I always Sabine, or anyway. SM820 is the model number there, and it's really just a one-channel feedback eliminator. When I say one channel, that's sort of true. I mean, it is one channel in terms of your microphone. What I do is I have two of those large diaphragm microphones, and I just have a Y connector to connect both of those mics together. Then I feed it into this one loop here. As you can see on the back there, it accepts one microphone in and out. So you go in there, and then you go out to your amp, is the way it works. And then on the top there, where you see those buttons, it has 8 different feedback frequencies that it can block at a time. And what you can do is you can turn it up and turn it up, and then it'll actually create the feedback when you're setting it up. And like it'll lock into one, and then it'll grab number 2, and then it'll grab number 3. You just keep turning it up until it grabs a number, and then you turn it down. And then you turn it up and you turn it down. You turn it up and you turn it down. And then when you get 6 of them grabbed, then you press that lock button there. There's a lock fix button there on the right. You press that, and that locks those 6 in. And then you leave 7 and 8 floating, so that during your performance, if something starts to feed back, number 7 or number 8 will grab it. And that's the way you use it. And it works great. Now, in the past, I have used it exactly like I told you. I used to set it up, and I would make it feed back there as I was setting it up. But that's kind of a pain in the neck. It's not so much of a pain for me, because I'm doing it. It doesn't bother me, really. But everybody that's there just hates it. Everybody that's there early or that are setting up their part of whatever the thing is that you're doing, if it's some program of some sort at a school or whatever, all the other people hate that feedback. And so it's very annoying. So I just quit doing that, to be honest with you. The last time I set it up, I just left it set that way, and I never reset it anymore. And so for the last several years, I haven't reset it, and it works fine. So it works, is all I can tell you. Do they even still make this? I don't know. This thing's at least 25 years old. I think it's for sure. I bought it in the mid-90s, I think, or late 90s. I'm not really sure when I bought it. So I don't even know if they make them anymore or if they, have improved it and maybe they've got multi-channel ones now. I don't know. I just know this is what I have and this is what I use, and I just wanted to point it out to you guys in case somebody else was looking for something like that. If you have a microphone that feeds back or some kind of a feedback problem, this thing should take care of it for you. Okay, moving on. The theme of today's, in the title, you probably saw that I was going to talk about the 4 most important power tools to me. Now, I want to caveat this by saying that this is me. This is the way I work. It doesn't necessarily mean it would be the 4 most important to you, but for the kind of work I do, these are the 4 most important, and they're in order. Number 1, the most important tool to me is my bandsaw. There is no more important tool than my bandsaw. I might as well go back to my full camera here. So the bandsaw for sure is my most important tool, no question about it. And you might say, well, why? I mean, you could get by without a bandsaw. I mean, you can do, and Stradivari didn't have a bandsaw, so obviously you can get by without one. But for me, with all the things I do, and I'm always cutting small parts and, trimming this piece of wood or that piece of wood, and even large boards, and for resawing boards, like if you're wanting to make sides out of a large board, the bandsaw is the tool, man. I mean, it's just the thing. Some people would argue and say it would be the table saw, but the way I work, by far, the bandsaw is much more important. So, and again, I'm going to put that last little caveat in there that I always say it's the most dangerous tool in the shop. It's the one that you'll cut your thumb off with because you're pushing things into it. You don't even notice it, and all of a sudden the wood just pops through and you cut your thumb off. So be very careful if you haven't ever used a bandsaw before, because it is the most dangerous tool in the shop. Not that it creates the most horrific accidents. The table saw would definitely be that one. It would create much worse accidents most of the time, but the bandsaw will get you when you least expect it. Okay, so that's tool number 1. Absolutely, there is no question that's my favorite, or my absolute have-to-have tool. And I've really thought about it a lot to say that was the number 1. So my number 2, and some of you are going to say, well, this is just self-serving since I just put these plans out. And of course, to some degree it is, and I won't even deny that. But my second most useful tool, and we're going to take a little deeper dive into this because that's one of the requests that I've been getting, is you didn't show enough about this. How do I know if I want the plans? Well, this is my number 2 most used tool, and if Caleb was online, he would tell you for sure it is. I mean, he knows for sure this is my most used tool. It might even be used in one way more than I use the bandsaw, but I use pretty much every day for something. I mean, pretty much every day. So I thought I'd show you here a little bit more about it. And now this little hood, this was a later addition. I used this thing for years without ever having a vacuum hood or without even having any safety guards on it at all. The only reason I finally gave in and put the vacuum hood and the safety guards on it was because of all the people screaming at me on YouTube. You're going to cut your finger off on those belts. And, I mean, they were just on and on about it. Well, I used it for 30 years without all that stuff. And I never had a problem. But I will admit, and I don't even want to argue the point, you should have your belt guards on there. I agree. I totally agree. Now that I got them on there, it's a good thing. And this vacuum hood is by far the best thing. You definitely want the vacuum hood. And this sort of is a safety thing too, keeps your hands out of there. But in a way, from that perspective, it's more of an annoyance than it is a safety thing. But I'll tell you about that. But anyway, this just slips over there. I put my vacuum hose right into that, and it just happens to fit it tight enough that it'll stay right there. It's a tight fit. And that sucks the dust out of there, and that really is important. That changed how this thing worked once I put the vacuum hood on there. So that is a definite must. The way it works here is, I'll go ahead and plug it in just to show you real quick, and then we'll unplug it again. you know, I just have a switch located right down here, and you just turn the switch on, and of course it's spinning that this drum here. And by the way, it's important that the bottom of the drum be rotating toward you. You know, if it's rotating away from you, like on the backside, if you were standing on the backside, the drum would be rotating away from you. And you don't want to feed things in on the backside because it will grab them and shoot them right straight through like an arrow. So you want to feed in from this side, obviously. And the other thing about that is that you definitely do not want to turn anything loose that you're feeding in there. Because if you do, if you turn it loose for just a breath, it will shoot that sucker right out of there. And so I have all kinds of push sticks, and you know, I just make them as I need them because there's no reason to care about these things. But I'll make something to push things through. So like if I got something real small and real thin, well then I'll just take this and push it through. And you can even push it through to the point where it's sanding on your push stick, and it doesn't hurt a thing. So, you know, you do want to have a push stick when you're using this. You can't just feed everything through by hand. Now, if you got something long, sure, you don't need a push stick. You can feed it through. You push it through and you grab it on the backside, you pull it on out. But you never, ever turn loose of anything that you're feeding in there. So this is turning towards you like that. Now, the table itself, when I made this was just a long piece of pipe. It was, I don't know, it was that long, I guess. I just sawed it in half in the middle. I put female threads on the inside of one half of it, and I put male threads on the other side, and then just screwed it together. That's all there is to it. These threads are 1/8 inch threads. So 8 TPI, if you understand the way threads work and everything. 8 TPI is 8 threads per inch. So it's 1/8 the inch, you know, basically from one thread to the other. And that's 125 thousandths if you're keeping score. And so when you turn this all the way around, like if you see those marks there, if you turn this all the way around, you've just changed it to those two marks again. You've just changed it 1/8 of an inch, or 125 thousandths. Now, I never turn it that far, I'll be honest with you. Most of the time as I'm using it, I'm just turning it like that, just turning it a teeny tiny bit. And if you just turn it just like a 1/4 inch, you're going to take about 1/1000th of an inch off. I mean, it's that accurate. It really is. And you can measure everything in thousandths with this thing versus trying to measure in, you know, 30 seconds or 64ths. Most carpenters or cabinet makers think they're just on top of their game if they're at a 64th. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of thousandths in a 64th. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's 125 thousandths in an eighth. And 62.5 thousandths in a 16th. So I'll give you some idea as you do the math. Anyway, the point being is that this thing is super accurate. And so like when you're making guitar saddles, and you know, I've said time and time and time again that those guitar saddles need to fit in there like they grew in there. You don't want to force them down in there. You don't want to have to bang them down into the groove. That's not good at all. You want them to go down in there with just a little bit of pressure, just with your fingertips, that you can just press them in place and they don't wiggle at all. This is what allows you to do that. You can do it manually, sure, but man, you're going to work yourself to death to do it, where this thing will do it in a couple seconds, you know. So that's the main reason I use this, is whenever I need to fit something to an exact size. Or like when I'm making braces for a guitar and I want those braces to be exactly, you know, pick a number, 5/16 of an inch thick is what most of the plans say, or whatever. Well, I can just know what the thousandths is on that and then feed it through here till I get it to the exact thousandth. Then I'm not guessing about it. Is it close? Like when you do a ruler, I mean, you're just estimating with a ruler. I mean, with a tape measure, that is just an estimate. You can say you're real accurate with a ruler, but it's an estimate. It's all it is. When you measure it with this, now you've measured it. It's exactly the size it needs to be. So that's the difference. These are pillow block bearings here on the ends, and these are real heavy duty, way heavier duty than this machine requires, but they only cost 20, 30 bucks. Why not? You know, you'll never wear these out on this machine. You know what I'm saying? So it's perfect. And on this end, on this side over here, if anybody's keeping score, it's a 6.5-inch pulley up on the top, and down on the bottom it's a 4-inch pulley. And that just was the combination I tried first, and I've stuck with it. It spins at just about the perfect speed. It's got enough power. It doesn't burn anything, you know. I mean, I'm not saying you'll never burn a piece of wood sticking it in here. Maple burns so easy, you just look at it crossways and it burns, you know. So anyway, that's my point, the way this all works. This little thing here's a lock. When you're spinning this around, I just quickly lock it. That makes no wobble or no movement in this. Again, if you're measuring in thousandths, any wobble, any movement is going to affect your measurements, you know. So that's what the lock is for. Otherwise, you probably don't even really need the lock, but if you want to be precise, the lock is the way you become precise. That's really it for the most part. So what is number 3, my most important tool? Let me just get this out of the way so I don't bang it. All right, so tool number 3, that's power tool number 3, is for me, again, you got to understand it's for me, is the belt and disc sander. I constantly need to use the belt and disc sander. And mine, I think my sander, I think it's an 8-inch, it might be a 10, I think it's 8. It's an 8-inch sander, and then the belt is a 4-inch wide belt, 36 inches long, I think, or is it 48? That might be 48. I think it's 48. But anyway, it's a, you know, the disc and belt sander are my number 3 tool. So bandsaw number 1, thickness sander number 2, belt and disc sander number 3. So what's number 4? I don't think you'll be surprised, but number 4 for me is a drill press. And I need the drill press all the time too. I'm constantly drilling some kind of a precise hole, and the drill press helps me be more precise than a hand drill. You can get it done with a hand drill for sure in most cases. Here's one case where you can't get it done with a hand drill and do as well. You just can't do it. And that is when I'm making all these saddles. You know, this has to be precisely at 90 degrees. It has to be a precise distance from there. And I probably could do that with my jig with a hand drill. I could do that probably still. But what I can't do is drill through to the point where you can see light coming through these holes, but you didn't drill all the way through. Try that with a hand drill. And so that's the reason I like the drill press for that. I can hold this up to the light that's in front of me here, and I can see the light shining through this, but yet it's not drilled all the way through. And so you can be very precise with a drill press when you learn to use one of those too. And so for me, that's the reason the drill press is so important. It's the precision of it versus the hand drill. So I guess that's it. Those are the top 4. If anybody has any questions about those, you can put them in the comments. By the way, for the new people that are here, maybe even the first time, be sure to put question marks in front of your question so that I can find it, because I'm not a good reader, and if you put a question mark at the end of your question, I may not see that. We got 165 viewers right now. Let me move on to the next thing. Okay, I just want to reiterate that on the thickness sander, I do have the plans available now to build your own, and I do have even suggestions within those plans on how you might be able to buy off-the-shelf parts versus making each one of those parts. I might also just say that on mine, on the drum itself, I used a hollow piece of aluminum, and I plugged both ends with aluminum and pinned it with aluminum, and then turned that down on my metal lathe. I have a metal lathe, so I could do that. But if you could also make that out of a solid bar of aluminum, but it's just going to cost a lot more. That's the reason I went with the hollow pipe. Okay, let's move on to the questions now. Ronald, oh no, one more thing. I did make the plans yesterday and get those out, and they are for sale on these. And some of you might say, oh, you're getting carried away with these. This is not that big a deal. I'm going to tell you right now, and you can believe what you want, but this was a game changer for me. I mean, like on dust collection, I don't have a huge dust collector. I just have one of those single, what do you call it, basket or whatever. I can't think of what you call that now, but the filter, just a big single filter, bag, vacuum bag, and it's about a 2 horsepower dust collector, and so that's pretty powerful. But as shops go, a lot of them will have those multi-bag, collectors and things. But because mine's not that powerful or not that strong, every tiny leak really mattered, and all of the plastic gates that I was using all leaked. All of them did. And I was afraid to spend $100 per gate for the aluminum ones because I thought, well, they might leak too. You just don't know for sure. I'm telling you, for black and white certainty, these do not leak at all. And the reason they don't leak, in case you're suspicious, the reason they don't leak is when you close this off this way, and it's closed off 100%, and this is pretty much an airtight fit, as you can see. It's a slip fit. The vacuum sucks the wood against this and seals it off. And so the wood is getting sucked in there, and it just instantly doesn't leak. Where the problem with the plastic is it's not self-cleaning, and it leaves dirt down in here, and the longer you use it, the more open that hole is. Like you can see the little hole there, how it's open there. That's the way the plastic works. And the more you use it, the bigger that hole gets. And when I was using the plastic ones, you just hear it all over the shop. With this, you absolutely hear nothing. There's no leaks at all. So anyway, those plans are available. They're only $10. And what it shows you is how to make the wooden parts. It does not show you how to make the plastic attachments. I made some comments in there of how to do it, but those would be unique to your setup, see? Like, in other words, you may not have a 4-inch pipe, you may have a 2-inch pipe. I don't know what you have, or maybe you got a 6-inch pipe. Well, then if you have a 6-inch pipe, you're going to have to revise the plans anyway to make the whole thing bigger. But the plans are for a 4-inch. Okay, moving on. We beat that to death. Ronald Rice is asking, what about cow teeth or boar tusk for saddle and kerf bending to hold back and top? Can it, I'm reading it just like it's written here and I can't understand it. Can it be made from thin wood, enough plies for thickness? Well, okay, for the saddles, he's asking about the cow teeth or the boar tusk. Well, teeth are like the elephant tusk. It's very, very hard. Especially teeth. Teeth are crazy hard. You can't cut that with anything. You can only grind it. If you tried to cut that with my bandsaw like I cut that deer antler, I can cut deer antler all day and it doesn't dull my saw. As soon as you try to cut one tooth, your saw is ruined. It's going to burn the teeth right up. So that's the difference. It's so crazy hard. And plus, I don't know that that's very available compared to deer antler. Deer antler is pretty available if you stop and think about it, comparative-wise anyway. So that's the reason that I'm on the deer antler kick. But also, I think that you always have a point of diminishing return. And so like a harder, real good, firm saddle is better than a loose, like a wooden saddle for the most part, because it transfers the sound better. But at some point, you'll get a diminishing return when you get too hard. And I think you're at that edge when you're with teeth like that, because you're getting really, really hard then. And I think the sound will become harsher. Let's see, but then he's talking about this kerfing. He's talking about bending thin pieces and the kerf on the inside, just make it in multiple plies. Well, you could do that, but there's really no need. That's actually more work than just making the kerf. The kerf is fairly easy to make, and because it's got all those little cuts in it, it bends really, really easy. And so the bending is probably more important on the kerf than anything else. And the little cuts in there really help it bend really easily and conform to your top, back, and sides. Mike Curtin, he's got a really long one here. He says, "Hi Jerry, I have a 72 D35 Martin that I bought new. The top was pretty bellied, about 3/8 of an inch." I'm going to come back to that. Uh, and by the way, some of these answers, especially on this one, are going to sound like I'm trying to be a smart aleck, and I'm not. I'm just trying to explain the black and white facts as I see them. And I'm not trying to rub anyone's nose the wrong way or make it sound bad. That's not my point. Um, But anyway, he says, especially since moving to Eugene, Oregon from Southern California about 13 years ago, it has been setting unstrung for about 2 years and has returned to almost flat. He says, I looked and felt around inside and nothing seemed to be loose. While I was looking at the bridge plate, I was surprised to find that it was made out of East Indian rosewood. Well, see, Martin does that too. I mean, that's my point is why would you use plywood on some and use really good stuff on others? And my point is use your best wood right there where your bridge and all your sound's coming from. There's no reason to use junk wood there. So you're good there in that case if you got rosewood there. Anyway, he's going on to say, the bridge plate seems to extend in all directions about a 1/2 inch more than the bridge, and that's a good thing. That's about right. It looks to be in good shape. It's well glued. There's no obvious cracks. My original plan was to replace it with about a 10% thicker and wider and made out of Paduke, as I've seen you do. He says, any surgery I can avoid on the top seems to me to be a good thing, and I agree with that. So now here's his fix that he's proposing. He says, I am thinking about cleaning it carefully and gluing a brace onto the bridge plate rather than the top. This seems to me to be the best way to make sure the top stays flat. Makes it relatively reversible if necessary and doesn't involve much risk to the top. Your thoughts? Well, I got several thoughts about this, Mike, and again, I'm not picking on you. I'm not trying to make it sound, like I'm putting you down or something. That's not it. But I have to question the 3/8 inch belly. That's my first, when I saw that, I thought, 3/8 inch belly? I don't think I've ever seen one with that much bow. If it's really truly 3/8 inch belly, then you got huge problems. I mean, like really, really big problems. I mean, there's something really, really wrong if it truly is 3/8 of an inch. Now, if that's a misquote or if, something else, then maybe we're dealing with something else. But if it's truly 3/8 and it's returned to flat, I can tell you for sure, you string it back up and play it for a little while. It might hold a day or two, but it's going to come back to whatever problem it's got. And honestly, that's the time to inspect it, is when you see the problem, is to really get in there and inspect it and see what's wrong, because something's wrong. If you have that much of a bow, you got a real, real problem. To me, 3/16, not 3/8, 3/16 is a huge bow, and that's less than a quarter. So, I mean, that would be huge. 1/8 inch is a lot. So 3/8 is just nuts. I mean, it's just nuts. It's off the charts. So that's what's throwing me there, is the first statement. So the second statement is your proposed fix. I am not a fan of doing anything that's not standard, if you will. Like, some of you might say, well, you changed the bridge pads out on a Martin guitar that had a, plywood bridge pad, and you've made it, rosewood. Well, Martin does that too. Martin puts rosewood in there. I don't think I'm doing anything non-standard there. Plywood's just crap, so that's why I changed it out. That's the reason. But I don't like to see non-standard fixes. In other words, like if you put some brace where it doesn't belong, that's not a standard fix in my opinion. So the answer, Mike, is I don't know what to suggest, because I don't know what could be causing that kind of problem. Yeah, there's something screwy going on. There's something rotten in Denmark there that I don't understand about this problem. So I have to leave it as I just don't know what to tell you. If you're passing through this way, bring it. That's all I can tell you. I'll give you an opinion. I'll look at it. I'm sorry. That's the best I got for right now because that doesn't sound right at all. David Roddy, and he helped me pronounce his name. I'm calling him Ratty because I didn't know. It wasn't meant to be a put down, but it's Ratty. While on hiatus, maybe you should design a zipper for the hollow body acoustic stringed instruments to facilitate easy removal of the back and allow for brace and soundboard repair. Well, David, that's not my charge. I like traditional stuff. I like to build them the way they've been built for years and all that. And I'm not a big innovator on changing all that kind of thing. I might be an innovator on how I work on them or how I fix them or those kinds of things. And you might say, well, this is part of that, making it a zipper. But, don't think so. Just not interested in that. I can't really think of any good way to make a removable back that wouldn't affect your sound and or the looks and or some other problem. If I think of something, then I might try that, but not likely. So that's just me. Maybe somebody else would feel totally different about it, but that's the way I feel about it. Arthur Wilson. Hello, Jerry. I really enjoy your channel. You do truly amazing work. I have a question. I have a 1948 Gibson L48 guitar that my dad bought for me back in 1966. My question is, have you ever worked on one of these? Also, would you say that these are rare to find? I was just curious. I have a letter from Gibson authenticating the year and the model. Thanks so much. Art from the Mouse Town in Florida. I'm not familiar with the Mouse Town. But anyway, I don't know that I've worked on specifically an L48. I think I've worked on L50s and other L models. I've worked on so many guitars over the years, they just run together. I truly don't remember one from the other. But no, those are nice guitars. There's no question about it. And whether or not I consider them rare, I think it depends a lot on the kind of music you're into. A lot of people that are into a certain jazz or blues and things are going to have those kinds of guitars, and they're going to be more common in those areas. In the kind of music I'm into, I would say it's very rare. You almost never see something like that. But I did look them up before the show this morning, and I could see that there were prices anywhere from $1,500 up to about $3,000 on just the very first quick search I did. So I'm sure they've got all varying prices from there too. But it sounds like a really nice guitar, and I would hang on to it for sure. Alan Dust, what is the most usable part of the antler to use for nuts and saddles? And then he goes on to say, I'm glad your wife is recovering from the injury. Yeah, she's doing okay, I think. Yeah, well, the nuts and saddles can be made from almost any part of the antler. The tips are real good for the nuts. That's kind of what I use the nuts for, or the tips for, is because the nuts aren't that large and the tips aren't that large, and they kind of go together. And so out toward the tips are usually fairly solid, by the way, and therefore they make good nuts and for the mandolin especially, and often for the guitar too. For the guitar saddles, I generally use, like I always say, I use the very base for the mandolin saddles because that's the most solid part. Well, the next piece up is what I typically use for the guitar saddles because it's usually fairly large still and fairly flat, at least in one plane. It's always curved, so there's never anything flat. But you can flatten that curve, like lay it down sideways, and it's within one plane. You can flatten an area off of there and then cut a guitar saddle out of that flatness. So that's kind of how I get my parts out of there. Not saying that's the only way you can do it. That's just how I kind of do it. Let's see. Kim Wilford, will you do a video on how you made your first mandolin and make one? Well, at the risk of sounding kind of blunt, no, I probably won't. I've got a lot of videos out there on building mandolins. I just did a quick search this morning, and I'm sure there's several more than this, but number 483 is the Massachusetts mandolin, number 560 is the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human, and it pretty much shows all the techniques that I do to build a mandolin. And there are other ones out there that I have built on camera too. So anyway, Kim, that's probably your best bet, is just to go out on YouTube and search RSW and then the number 483 or the number 560, and you'll find a whole series of videos on building those mandolins. David Roberts, what do you mean when you say it's off 10 cents, 20 cents? I heard this from other luthiers as well. Can't figure it out. Okay, David, no problem. Glad to tell you. And it's a good question, because not everybody understands all these things. And quite honestly, I don't know that I know for sure what the cents means itself. I mean, I just know it's measured in cents. I don't really necessarily know what cents means. I just know how to use it. Okay, I don't know if this will show up very well, but you can see the little marks, the numbers and the marks here. Well, each one of those marks, you can see the divisions. Each one of those marks is 10 cents. So if it's off by 10 cents, it's off by that first mark. If it's off by 20 cents, it's off by the second mark. If it's off in between there somewhere, then you just guesstimate. Like I could say, well, that's about 5 cents off. It's halfway to the 10 cents mark. So that's all it is. Really nothing crazy complicated. I'm not sure that all electronic tuners will tell you that, but these analog tuners, you can tell that. So anyway, that's just how I do it. That's all it is. Nothing real mystical about it. The next one is from MylexG, MYLEXG. So I don't know, is that a car? I know nothing about cars. You've probably never met anybody who cares less about cars than this guy right here. If it gets me to where I'm going, it's a good car. That's all I care about cars. Where should the straight line from the fingerboard hit in respect to the bridge or saddle? Also, when gluing the bridge back, I did clean the bottom of the bridge, but there is a little tear out on the body where the bridge was. Will the glue fill those gaps? It's not bad, he says. Well, flatter and better fit is better. You know, if you got a big tear out there, if it's big enough, I filled them. I'll fill them with some other piece of wood and then smooth it out. So I can't tell you for sure yours is not bad enough to fill, but if it doesn't look bad to you and if it's pretty much in the plane, you're probably okay. What you might do is just kind of sand it out and scrape it out in that general area, feather it out a little bit, and then when you clamp it, you can clamp it together pretty good. It may sound like a cop-out answer, but you just kind of, you don't want to have a big gap, that's for darn sure, because it will not fill a large gap at all. And really, glue doesn't fill any gap worth a darn. I mean, it just doesn't do that. That's not what it's for. Okay, and then the first part of the question was the straight line from the fingerboard hit in respect to the bridge or saddle. Well, I'll just use this as an example, even though it's not a guitar. In case you're wondering, this is not a guitar. Just being silly. Okay, like you lay a straight edge on top of your frets, and you want that to be just about level with the top of your bridge. If it's above that just by a millimeter, 40 thousandths, you're fine. And that's about where you want to be. You don't want to be much more above it than that. About 40 thousandths is real good. But that's on top of your frets, you know. Now, if your fretboard's not on there at all, in other words, if it's just the neck and you haven't put the fretboard on there yet, then you want to be where the bridge is going to be eventually, or where the saddle's going to be eventually, then you want it to be a little bit more than that, but not much, like 40 to 60 thousandths above the top of the guitar. If there's no fretboard on there, if there's no fretboard and you just got your straight edge going across here, then you want to be about, and it's just in the ballpark, 40 to 60 thousandths, which is 1 to 1.5 millimeter for my millimeter friends. And definitely make sure you get your decimal point in the right place there. You don't want 14 millimeters. Or 15 millimeters, I mean. Okay, let's see. Charles Salkowitz says, hi Jerry, on the first guitar you built, do you recall what your thickness the Padauk sides to? If you don't remember, do you care to give an experienced guess at a minimum range you would use? Yeah, well, I've built a lot of guitars out of Padauk. Padauk is hard to bend. I mean, I'll just tell you, it is not easy to bend. But almost any hardwood is hard to bend. So it's not really a lot harder than other woods, but it fights bending, I will tell you that. So I go a little thinner than maybe what some of the plans will tell you. I think most of the plans are going to tell you in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 thousandths. I'm down to 75 thousandths on my Padauk when I'm bending Padauk. 70 thousandths is okay too. So 70 to 75 thousandths is where I take it down to bend Padauk. So hopefully that'll help you. The side bender I have, I think, does the best job for bending Padauk compared to the other methods I've tried. I've tried steaming it, I've tried boiling it, and boiling it works, but I've had sides break, when I force them. After being boiled, I'll put them in my mold and the mold will force them into position, and I've had sides break that way. So to me, the hand bending with my homemade bender, which you can find on my website for free. Those are plans I've given away for free. You can find that side bender there on my website and videos about it and that sort of thing. And that's how I would suggest you try to do it. But yeah, thin is good on Padauk. It's really hard to bend, I think. Let me move on here. It says, do you have, he's got further question, I think. Also, do you have any suggestions for a good humidity level when you're gluing the top and the backups? Well, yeah, the best humidity level is just ignore it. If it's super humid, you got a problem. I'll agree with that. If it's super, super, super dry, maybe you got a problem. I don't know about that. I don't think it could be hardly too dry, in my opinion. But the super wet is far worse. So just your normal humidity level in your normal house, in your normal workshop. Like my shop is air conditioned, so it's heated and cooled. And I don't ever even let the humidity cross my mind. Not ever. Not one single time ever, and it's never been a problem. So there you go. There's just so much made out of humidity that's just mostly hype. I mean, I'm telling you, it's hype. It's to sell those humidifiers at the music stores. It's just not worth worrying about. Boy, our viewer count has gone up and down today like crazy. It's back down to 156. It was up as high as 180 a few minutes ago. And it's gone up and down several times. So I don't know what's going on with the viewer count today. I hope I'm not boring you to tears. That makes you quit. Clyde Lewis. Hi, Jerry. Trinian is doing great. He was talking about the fly fishing. Thanks for the video. Cash is having a good experience and sounds like he's definitely benefited from your guidance. Yeah, I'll tell you what, old Cash, I don't mean to take too much credit, but yeah, he couldn't have done what he did. If you saw his Facebook video where he got second in the contest, yeah, I don't mean to sound mean or belligerent or something, but truly he wouldn't have placed had he done it the way he was doing it before. He was completely out of time. His guitar rhythm was not in sync with his singing. He was changing chords at the wrong time. Everything was wrong. It just, there wasn't anything right about it the way he was doing it. And he had been taking lessons for like 3 years. And it boggles my mind that it went on for like 3 years like that. And that, I actually begged and pleaded with his grandmother. I think it was like over a year ago. I said, look, please let him just come to my shop. Let me give him a few pointers. He needs help. Because I mean, I could tell the kid wanted to do it really bad. You know, you can see the desire in a child. And if they've got the desire, that's the time to fan the fire. You know, you don't wait until they're grow out of it. You know what I'm saying? And so finally, after a year, she finally, I think I finally said something to her again. I said, you know I told you this before, but you really need to get him over here. We got to fix, because he's got some issues and we need to fix them. And, you know, I was trying to be nice and not put him down because he's a good kid, you know. And so she agreed, and so they quit taking the lessons at the other place and brought him here. And I truly thought it was an uphill battle that I would never win. That's really what I thought. I thought this was going to be a futile effort at this point. But I'm surprised. He's listened to me. He has taken my advice, and I stop him. I mean, I stop him just like that. Every time he makes a mistake, I stop him. And I know you might say, well, that's being a little harsh. But I explained to him why I'm doing it. You know, I said, look, I'm not picking on you, Cash. I'm just going to stop you every time you have a problem because I don't want to create a habit. Habits are hard to break, you know. And I said, we're not going to let you create any bad habits. You know, we're going to make sure it's done right. We're back up to 179. Okay, moving on. I beat that to death, but let me move on here and get to his question. Let's see. When you make a new brace or tone bar for an archtop guitar top with a broken brace, do you use a scribe tool to trace the curve of the arch onto the new piece? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Flat top guitars don't really have much of an arch. They're pretty much flat. That's most of them. Now, I know the internet, if you go out there and get on the forums, they're going to tell you differently, but you know, I've only seen 50,000 guitars in 40 years, and slight exaggeration, but I have seen a lot of guitars, and they're pretty much flat. So there's really not much there that you have to worry about. Now on the backs, I'm not saying you don't have them on your archtop guitars. I don't work on that many archtop guitars. But if I'll find some way to trace that pattern. And if there's enough of the old brace left, I'll use that for tracing the arch. If there's not enough left, well, then I'll make some sort of a pattern or template out of paper or whatever I have to do to get that curve. So, I do match what was there if I can match what was there. Let's see. Going on, I think he's got, it's a long question, so he's got some more here. I'm not sure I'm understanding everything about the rest of the question. He says, I was thinking that the brace would lose the curve if it was taken out since it is flexible. So well, he's talking about some kind of kerfed bracing, and I don't really ever remember seeing kerfed bracing. I mean, I don't know. The kerf is around the edges, but not, I'm trying to, am I just being stupid here? Because I don't remember seeing kerfed bracing that I can think of. Maybe there's some in some guitar that I'm just not thinking of right now. But I don't see kerf bracing. It's all solid bracing, and it's all carved to fit the top or the back, whatever it needs to be. By the way, now that I think about it, my better answer for tracing that curve, for making a curved brace is, let me find it here real quick. I don't see the piece I need right at the moment here, but we'll just pretend. We'll do some pretending. I have this little block of wood, and you see this little hole in it. That little hole just accepts a ballpoint pen insert. So I slide a ballpoint pen through there with the ink point sticking out right there. And then I just take this and like I'll put my new piece of wood on the curved back or the curved top if we're talking about an arch top guitar, and I'll lay the piece of wood across there. Then I'll just slide this along the curve of the inside of the guitar, and then this ink will draw the line right on there, and then I just saw it and it works out perfectly. That's how I actually do it most of the time. Okay, sometimes I don't always think of everything I do when in these questions like that. And then it goes on. Well, to me, the question seems to kind of be the same question over and over somehow. I tell you, I'm a terrible reader. I'd have to read this 3 or 4 times to get exactly what you mean. But really, for making braces, it's pretty straightforward. You just make them to a certain size, and again, I use my thickness sander to make sure they're the right thickness. I don't want them thicker than they should be. And then as far as cutting the bottom goes, I just use that little block of wood and that ink pen, and I just draw it on there. And then I just take it over to the bandsaw and saw that curve, And then I'll take sandpaper and put it down in the top or the back, and then sand it. I don't move it a long way. That won't help you. You just move it a little bit like that until you see it sanding and contouring perfectly to the top or the back. So that's how I do it. I hope that answers your question, Clyde. Kyle Quevillon, Quevillon. I noticed a wood lathe in the background. Do you turn much on your wood lathe? If so, what sort of things do you turn? Well, the truth is, no, Kyle, it mostly sits there. I don't do very much with the lathe. I did make myself a bracket to hold violin pegs, and I often used to turn violin pegs on there. I had a couple of different peg shavers, but I never did like them very much. Or a few years back, I think one of the viewers sent me a peg shaver, and that particular peg shaver worked better than the ones I had in the past. So now, for the most part, I shave them with a shaver rather than turn them on my metal lathe or my wood lathe. But I don't use the wood lathe very much. I'll be honest. I'm trying to think. I do often use it, but not for like turning. I'll put something in there and then sand it to a certain size, like maybe I need a sound post smaller to fit down through I'll put the sound post in the wood lathe and then put sandpaper on there and sand it till that sound post is the right size to go through the F hole. So that's the kind of stuff I use it for. I just mostly use it for trinket type stuff rather than actual turning. Though I have done turnings over the years, and just not very much. So, sorry, just don't have much on that. All right, we're basically out of time, but I'm going to go to the questions, today's live questions, and it's just not letting me scroll up. It just kept scrolling back down as I scrolled up. There's just something that has to happen, Okay, moving up here to the top. I see people from all over, so thank you for being here. James Kopp is the first one I see, Koppe, pronounced copy. Oh, okay, James Koppe. Morning, I am interested in some one-on-one mandolin lessons. I am 68 and a few days younger than you. I sing Celtic music, traditional Irish gospel, etc. Well, I don't know if you've already purchased my mandolin lessons, and it's going to sound self-serving, but I have had the best compliments over the last 10 or so years on my mandolin lessons of anything I've ever done. I mean, honestly, I just get huge praises from it. People just tell me, oh, I wished I would have learned this 30 years ago. Oh, I wish I would have known this, when I was a kid. I'd be in Nashville now. I get those comments all the time. So James, that's the best I can help you is get my mandolin lessons. You'll have to download it to your PC or something and just play them. And it takes you from a rank beginner to playing very complicated songs. So that's the best I can offer you. If you're local here and if you really, really want face-to-face mandolin lessons, I might be able to help you out, but I'm really not looking to do that because I just got more than I can shake a stick at now. Pete C., how's your wife's hand? She's doing good, Pete. Her hand is healed pretty well. She kept it wrapped up and taped straight and stuff so it wouldn't bend and mess it up. And so I think she's doing fine. Robert Johnson, guitar intonation rig. Yeah, it's so simple, Robert, that it's almost embarrassing. If you can use it 2 or 3 different ways. All I do is I just, off the end pin where the strap button is, or end pin, strap button, whatever you want to call it, I just hang something like this. This goes over the top of the guitar, and then I just have little hooks in this. This is just clothes hanger. And then you can see I soldered a little separator here to keep it from closing up because I found that's the biggest problem with this is that when you put tension on it, they want to pull together. So I just put something there to keep them apart. And you just hook the ball of your string on these little hooks. And I only do the 2 outside strings. That's all you need. You could use an actual tailpiece on a like on a archtop guitar, a tailpiece, and adapt that to do the same thing if you wanted to. The problem is, as you can see, I've got several here. They vary in length down to the tail pin, so that's why I made several different ones. Anyway, that's all there is to it. It's very, very, very simple. And so then you just hook your 2 E strings on here and go up there and you tune it up. And then your bridge is up in this area. Now, I use it 2 different ways. If I'm putting a bridge back on that already has the saddle slot cut, well, then I'll move the whole bridge. I'll put the saddle in and I'll move the whole bridge around till I find the sweet spot for that bridge. But most of the time, I'm putting on a brand new bridge and I don't have a slot cut in the bridge. And so I just move the saddle. So let me back up. I glue the bridge down first. Then I just set a loose, skinny saddle on there and slide the saddle around until I get it exactly where I want it. Then I mark it under the front. I mark it on the front of the saddle under each string and then draw a straight line across there, and that's where I route the slot out. So that's how I do it. It's very simple, very straightforward. The factories, why they don't do it this way is it just takes way too much time. They're into a hurry and get it done, and so they just use measurements, and measurements get you really close. And on some guitars, it's better than close. It's nearly perfect. But as we all know, on a lot of guitars, and I would say at least 50-50, at least that, if not a lot more, it's not right. It's just close. And, so anyway, that's why I do what I do. It just makes it work so much better. I hope that's what you needed to know about. It's just clothes hanger wires, all it was, nothing real fancy at all. And if I get to a guitar that these don't fit on, well, then I'll make another one. You know what I mean? And then I also do, I'll just tell you, I do put leather here so that it doesn't scratch up the end of the guitar, and I'll put leather under here or something, piece of cardboard, something under there so that it doesn't mess up the top of the guitar. Moving on. What grit sandpaper do you typically use on your sander? On my thickness sander, I think it's 100 grit. 80 grit, I think, and 100 is about where I stay most of the time. Let me double check that real quick because I think Yeah, this is 80. Yeah, 80 seems to be real good. I'm real happy with 80. Um, it leaves a little bit of a mark that you got to sand out lightly, but you can take 220 and knock it down pretty fast. The 80 seems to be really good. Now, while we're talking about that, I might mention that the way I put this on, you can see I have a long cut there. Well, that's to start the angle. So, like, you know, I'll start on the end of the tube with this angle, and then I wrap it around there at an angle all the way across. As I think you might have been able to see in that earlier shot, but anyway, it's wrapped on the tube at an angle so that there's no, you know, straight up and down seams. You don't want straight up and down seams. Anyway, that works really good, and 80 grit is what I use. And I have used 100. It's a little bit light, but 80 is real good. I really do like the 80. Moving on. Gotta Fly Lee says, will you be doing shop talks during your time off? Yeah, I'm going to continue the shop talks during the hiatus. The hiatus is mostly just to catch up on projects around here, but I am going to also be filming most of those projects, especially like building the water wheel and installing that and the pouring the concrete and all the things I'm going to do for that. I'm going to build a whole house and everything right there. It's going to be a production, so you'll see all that. I have a couple of things that I just got to do, maybe have to do them even first. Like there's a window up in our main house. It's a bay window, and it is in just rotted away. It's just in bad shape. So I'm going to probably tear that out and fix that, and I'll probably film that. I've got a door on the back of the rental retreat on the downstairs that, I mean, it basically seals as it is, but some of the trim down on the bottom is really rotted out, and I'll either replace the whole door or replace some part of that, and, you know, I don't know. I'll just have to see when I get there. But I'll probably film those kinds of projects too. So, and I will continue the shop talks every Friday morning regardless. So thanks for asking. Okay, Scott Roberts. Oh, cents is short for percent. Okay. I didn't know that. I'm not going to lie to anybody about anything. If I know something, I'll tell you, and if I don't know, it'll just be showing all over me because I just don't know. Yeah, okay. I didn't know that's what it was for. I thought it meant, I mean, it makes sense, but I was thinking that it, I just said cents again. Anyway, it does make sense that it is percent, but I thought it might have been some other musical term or something that I'm not even familiar with, because I'm self-taught on everything pretty much. Cent refers to 100, someone said. And then somebody else goes further and says cent is a logarithmic. Now we're getting too deep here. A unit of measure used for music intervals, 12-tone equal temperament device. This is what I kind of thought it would mean, something like this. So I don't know. I'm going to let you guys fight that out in the comments because I truly don't know. And it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. That's the truth. I just don't care. I don't need to care because it doesn't matter. All I care about is, am I dead center and do I stay dead center? You know, that's really all I care about. And, you know, and of course I use the cents to be a relative how far I'm off, you know, obviously. Okay, and again, not trying to sound smart. That's just the truth of it. That's just the way it is. Jason Wallen, I love your channel, but know nothing about music. What is the difference between tone and pitch? Just trying to help understand the videos. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I'm going, yeah, the difference between tone and pitch. I'm going to defer to the comments on that one. Sorry, I don't know if I know myself. I mean, I don't know. I think they're the same thing, I guess. I don't know. I guess you could define a lot of things a lot of ways. But pitch is I guess if I was trying to separate that, I would say pitch is um, the note. Like, are you at a G, G sharp, G, like that's the sense again. The pitch to me is, are you on the perfect pitch, here or there, that type of thing. So pitch is that to me. This is me, okay? This is not official. This is me. And then the tone to me is, does it sound pretty? I mean, the tone is like, okay, it may be perfect, but does it sound nice or does it sound harsh? That's tone to me. So there you go. You asked me, so that's my answer. Somebody else may totally disagree. How thin is too thin for an acoustic bridge on a laminated spruce top? Well, I don't like to see bridges thinner than a quarter inch, and in my opinion, a quarter inch is too thin. So if they're down to a quarter inch, for sure you need to do something, I think. I like to see them, 300 thousandths is just about as thin as I like to see them go, and 300 thousandths is fine. I don't have a problem with 300 thousandths, but 250 is pretty thin. So I don't like to see them at 250. So somewhere between those two numbers, you can kind of be okay, but you're on the edge, when you're down there like that. I hope that makes sense. Henry Golick, hi Jerry, Henry here from London, Ontario, Canada. How would you straighten out a warped 50s pick guard? I think it's plastic. Well, I don't have any magic, on that. I just use a heat gun for the most part. Like a hair dryer type heat. You don't want to get crazy hot, especially if you're talking a real old pick guard, like 50s like that. That probably is an old one, and that's probably the pre-hazard material days. That's probably a hazardous material, and it will catch fire like that. I mean, like that. But still in all, heat will help you straighten it out. Just don't get too much heat on it, or you'll understand exactly what I mean when I say it'll catch fire just like that. And when it catches fire, it goes, it's just like a magic trick. It just disappears in front of you. Or if it doesn't, it'll burn so fast that you'll wish it had have just disappeared in front of you. Either way, but I would still use heat, I think, but I would be very careful with it on an old one. Let's see. Oh man, that scrolled a bunch, I think. Doggone it. I don't know where I'm at now. Sorry. I'm getting close. Okay, here we go. John Mole, Jerry, I know you built your first mandolin from the Siminoff book. I'm doing the same for carving the top, and then it's cut off. Bummer. Maybe he's down outside, I mean. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. There's Siminoff suggests carving the inside first. I know you carved the inside first now. Bad experience doing the inside first. I carved the outside first. I don't remember what Siminoff recommended, to be truthful, but I really believe firmly this would be if I don't remember from the book. It's been years since I've looked at it, to be truthful. But if he does recommend carving the inside first, that's where I would disagree strongly with him. I would disagree very strongly on that. And the reason is, I want to know that the outside is right. I want it right. See, like if you carve the inside first, you may not get the outside right. Does that make sense? I mean, you may not have the opportunity to make the outside right. So make the outside right first. Get it to the right shape, the right size, the right height, the right everything. Once you get that as good as you think you got it, that you can get it, then go to the inside and carve the thicknesses, because that way you can control it. You can't control it the other way, in my opinion. I'm not saying you couldn't do it the other way. I'm just saying you can't control it as well. You're in better control doing it the way I'm telling you to do it. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to that one big time. On instruments that don't have frets, is there such a thing as intonation? Yes, there definitely is. But it's all in your ear. You know, it's the intonation that, you know, like violinists have to be, they have to basically have, I don't want to say they have to have perfect pitch. That's not exactly what they have to have, but they got to have pretty close to perfect pitch. Let's just say it that way. They got to have a, what you would call a good ear to intonate properly as they play. Because that's the thing that I've mentioned in the last couple of violin videos, is that the fret scale can vary. I tried to use the standard of 325. Someone, I think Zappa, said he used 328. Well, 328 is probably okay, because that's halfway between the two that I use. I'll either settle on 325 or 330. And it really depends on the violins. There's a lot of violins that 325 just works perfect on. There's a lot of violins that 330 is what you need, because they're just a longer scale. But the point is that I try to set them all up. Like if I had two, if I'm a real good violinist and I had 2 or 3 violins that I need to rely on, I'm going to want them all set to the same length. I'm going to want them all at 325, 328, 330, whatever it is, but I'm going to want them all there. That way, when I'm playing them, the intonation is going to be the same on each one of them. So yes, intonation is still a factor on any instrument. On any stringed instrument, intonation is a factor, whether or not it has frets or not. Let's see, Rick Curtis. Hi, Jerry. What is a good rate to charge for guitar lessons? Well, you know, I have been out of it for so long, I don't know anymore. I don't know what the music stores are charging. That might be the best way for you to find out, is just call your local music store and say, what would it cost me to take guitar lessons? And they'll just tell you, you know. But honestly, I don't know. You know, for me to pull time away from doing what I'm doing, which I'm doing less and less of it all the time because of the hands, but I'd have to charge quite a bit to make it really worthwhile, which is one of the reasons, by the way, and it is just one of the reasons that I made my mandolin training and put it on DVD, because I just didn't have time anymore to do all the lessons that I was doing. At one time, I had a lot of students. I had people come to me all the time. And I used to give group lessons too, and I would go places where there'd be a group of people and give lessons, and that was really fun, and that really was one of the best ways to give lessons. You might even check into that if you never thought of that, is get the word out and have a group of people and you give all the lessons, you know, at the same time. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty fun way to do it. So I really don't know. I'd have to leave that up to you to decide your rate. Ronald Coakley, is it just the finish that cracks on the top? I have a Gibson that splits open at the seams if I don't use a humidifier. Well, yeah, I don't know. I could, again, get off on that tangent, but yeah, I don't really know what to tell you about that. I just say keep them in a place that's fairly consistent. If you go from one extreme to the other, you're going to have problems all the time. You know, so, you know, try to keep them in a stable place, and they should stabilize. You know, it's just common sense. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm not going to get into the deep dive on that humidity thing anymore. Gordon Bartlett, 166 watching, but only 81 likes. Well, now there's only 154 watching, so maybe I'll settle for 154 likes. All right, moving on. I think we're about to the end. Scott Roberts, that was a typo. Meant maybe cents, meant percent. Oh, okay. Okay, so I kind of think that one explanation that started taking that deep dive, I kind of think that's probably closer to what I had thought it meant. But I don't know what it means exactly, so I'm going to go with that. Are you coming back to Mountain View soon? Yes, we've got our Mountain View scheduled for, let me look at the calendar real quick, sorry. We've got it scheduled for, I think it's June. How come this, oh, here we go. Let me see. June 8th through the 12th. No, that's not right. No, through the 11th. June 8th through the 11th. So this every calendar's different. The way they wrap their dates and things. Anyway, so it's 8th through the 11th. That's Thursday through Sunday. That's when we'll be down there, June 8th through the 11th. And let's see, one last question. Scott Roberts, thumbs up, people. Jerry has to eat too, maybe not so much. Yeah, well, I've lost 14 pounds for sure. On my good days, I've lost 15 pounds. It depends on, my scale goes up and down, kind of like my my viewer count today. It's gone up and down all day long. It's crazy how it's gone up and down. But anyway, yeah, I have lost 14 pounds for sure, and I'm on the edge of 15. So I'm gonna get down to 190. Yeah, I'm just gonna get there one way or the other. And if anybody, I'm no authority on weight loss. Let me just say it that right up front. But here's how I'm doing it, and it's working for me. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I really don't. People told me, cut out the sugar, cut out the soda, cut out the tea. A few years ago, I tried that. I cut all of it out. I didn't drink any sweetness at all. I drank water pretty much, or milk, for breakfast or whatever. And I don't drink coffee. So I drink water, or unsweetened tea. And that was it. And I did that for 6 solid months. And I cut back on what I was eating too, a little bit. I didn't lose 1 single pound. Now, 1 pound in 6 months, and when I tell you I do something, you know me, I do it. And for 6 months, I didn't drink nothing sweet, and I didn't lose 1 pound. All right, so then a while back, I got on my diet kick. Then I fell off of it. That's the problem with the diet. You fall off of it. And the difference was, all I did was I cut out the other kinds of carbohydrates. I cut out the breads, like the donuts and the cookies and those kinds of things, which I love. I absolutely love them. But I cut those out. And that's what I'm doing this time. That's really mostly what I'm cutting out. And I'm eating smaller portions. And that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm just cutting out the bread and eating smaller portions. And I truly don't even feel like I'm missing anything. I really don't. I love cake, cookies, and all those things. And my wife she seems like she buys 10 times more of it now that I'm on a diet than she did when I wasn't on a diet. But anyway, I'm going to get down to 190, heck or high water, one way or the other. And that's all I'm doing. And I'm still drinking all the sodas and the teas, and I keep losing weight. In my opinion, there's a lot of hype behind the sugar thing. And I know that flies in the face of 99% of the thinking out there. But I think that you burn that kind of sugar off like that, especially if you're active. Now, if you're a couch potato, that may be true. But I'm not a couch potato. But the sugary drinks don't seem to have any effect on me whatsoever. I'm still drinking them. I got my sweet tea and my sweet lemonade right here, right now. And I'm still losing weight as we speak. See you guys probably Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for that super chat that just happened, and I don't know who gave it to me because there it is, Clyde Lewis. Thank you, Clyde. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.